Okay, it's the end of the session. I'm here with my buddy. This is Gus and this is Beau. And Gus, even though he's the more subordinate dog, he actually was growling at Beau here, who was the senior dog. So basically, there we go. Crash. That's a word I like to use. Now he's a rescue dog. He was adopted as a puppy, but the guardians, I think, have kind of carried over like a lot of us do when we bring a child into a home. We kind of favor that first child for a while. That's okay to do initially, but we want to drop that after a while, and I think that's been carried on. And so I think he's kind of a little bit more dominant as a result of this. He's a little bit more insecure and a smaller dog, obviously. So basically, we started off the session by talking about exercise. Remember to start that exercise journal. Remember the fun, creative ways to exercise them. You can do the treats on the stairs, using the laser, the fetch. I would definitely get an eye fetch for him. If he likes to fetch, that'd be a wonderful way for him to burn energy, and it might teach him how to do it as well. And message me if you need questions on how to teach a dog to do that. And then the scent games. And again, these guys are one of the top 3 sniffers because that's why they have the big ears to wave that scent into their nose. So Google scent games. You might want to get a DVD or a book on that, as it's a nice way to deplete some energy, and it's very stimulating for them. We also talked about rules. The dogs really don't have any rules. Usually the example rule I throw out is, are they no peeing or pooping in the house? But I think that he's insecurely peeing in the house, and I think he's marking over it. So what I recommend the guardians do is a little remedial potty training. For remedial potty training, follow the dog outside, and as soon as it starts to pee or poop, come up with a command word like Putin, like we talked about. And as soon as the dog starts to pee or poop, say Putin, but be careful not to say it too excitedly. Don't say Putin, Putin. And then just say it once when they start to pee or poop within 3 seconds, preferably with about a third of a second. And then as soon as they get done, pop another treat in their mouth and then say Putin a second time. If that's your command. We're going to put you up here so people can see you. And the idea is we want to create the association with the action with the command word, and then the command word with the reward. And after a while, then, now he actually did a good job. He went to the door and kind of grumbled or protested a little bit, saying, I want to go outside, which is good. Now, when we have a dog that we can't fully trust, we do, and the guardians are already doing this, kind of cordon off part of the house so that we can kind of maintain and keep them in our visual acuity. But if we take them outside and we're giving those treats, a really high value treat every time they do it outside, after a while, the hope is, yeah, I'm talking about you, buddy, that he's like, I will dare not waste this urine inside because this stuff is gold. If I do it outside, I get the tastiest treat I've ever had. And so for a week, really try to do it every single time he goes outside. I found a week, maybe 2 weeks max, you really nip it in the bud. Now he's marking over where he pees, which is pretty normal for dogs. He's also marking on vertical surfaces, and that's usually an indication of a dog that perceives itself to be one of the leaders. And so if that's why we talked about a bunch of other things off camera to help him, and we'll talk about more. We'll talk about them all here. But the idea is once he starts to identify as a follower, then it'll seem more inappropriate for him to mark. But a lot of people Febreze or they try to cover it up. Dogs can smell cancer inside a human's body. You will never be able to cover up the smell. You have to use an enzyme-based cleaning product in order to actually sufficiently do that. So I would make sure you have one of those and clean it, get a carpet cleaner or whatever it is, or get a new carpet if you have to, or luckily we have area rugs. And then the idea is just to really keep on repping it until hopefully we don't have any more accidents, and then they're doing it outside and he doesn't have anything to pee on top of. Let me see, what else did we go over? We went over a lot of rules. They're breaking one of them right now, but their family doesn't have the X-mats and the tools yet. But one of the first rules I suggest is no furniture for 30 days minimum. Now, all my clients here is 30 days. 30 days minimum. It's probably going to be 60 or 90 days. Really, you want about a month of the dogs no longer trying to get up on the couch before you start counting that time. And we want those neural pathways to realign, and it takes about at least 30 days of abstaining before they can. So get the X mats, just the letter X, M-A-T-S. They're about $11 on Amazon. Get about 3 for here, 4 for over there, maybe 1 for the chair where our illustrious cameraman is sitting. And that way we kind of block them and they don't practice getting up there. Before we get back to the rest of the rules, we also do a lot of something we call maintenance. We have kind of a glass door and the dogs can see out, so I probably block the bottom 4 panes, and I do it on the outside of the door because otherwise they'll scratch it off on the inside. And that way, every time they go to the door, they can't see and they don't get reinforced and they bark at people passing by and think that they defended the house. Let me see, other rules we went over, not being allowed to be within 7 feet of a human who's eating. We use those escalating consequences to enforce those rules. Not being allowed in the kitchen when we're preparing food. Not being allowed near the other dog when the other dog's eating. And we're going to eat something before we feed them, and we're going to feed them one at a time. Now, he is the older dog, so we're going to feed him first. When he gets done eating, he likes to linger. He's not allowed to be in the area of where we're feeding, and we're going to use that the motion that we did before to keep him out. It'll be hard for about a week or so, and after a week, he'll just kind of lose interest. He'll stay behind the line on his own. And remember, just keep those bowl positions switched so he's not walking by his bowl on the way to go eat his food. Otherwise, he'll try to eat them both. And remember, his word is lasagna, his word is pizza. Every time they take their first bite for about 2 to 3 months, say lasagna. And after a while, when he hears the word lasagna, there's no food in his mouth, so it doesn't mean anything. But he hears the word lasagna, there's food in his mouth. So it becomes the command word to eat. Let me see. Other rules we went over. Have to sit before I let you in or out a door. I go to the door, I say sit once. If you don't sit within 3 seconds, I walk away, sit down somewhere, wait 1 minute and ask for a timer. After 1 minute, go back and command them again to sit one time. If they don't sit, then I walk away for 2 minutes, next time for 4 minutes, and so on. And as soon as either one of them sits down, I open the door as fast as I can. I let that dog out. If they both sit, then they both get out. If he only sits, then he doesn't get out. I would pull out treats every once in a while and ask for a sit, because he sits better than he does. He likes to do a grovel, as we're calling it. But he's a more insecure dog, and so we want to do things that build up his self-esteem. And before we get back to rules, teaching new tricks and commands is a wonderful way to build up some self-esteem. All these dog trainers want to be Cesar Millan. They want a TV show. I'm actually trying to get a TV show going right now. It's not going very well, but I have people I'm talking to. But the idea is we want to help them learn new tricks and commands, because that boosts their self-esteem. And go to YouTube. All these trainers will show you how to treat and do all these different tricks. So try to set it up so that each week we're going to, on Sunday or Saturday or whatever the day is, we're going to teach them how to do bang your dead. And then we teach the dogs separately. And then once they can know how to bang your dead, then everything. You want me to pet you, bang your dead. You want to go outside, bang your dead. You want to food, whatever it is. At the end of the week, you say, bleh, and they're just already bang your dead. The next week, teach them roll over, or whatever these are. Actually, you should teach roll over first, and then bang your dead. They kind of build on each other. But I'd like the guardians to take turns. We have 3 guardians essentially in the house. So each Saturday or Sunday, the guardian takes the dog separately, teaches them how to do that command, and then teaches everybody else what the command words are. Remember, come up with funny command words. Roll over for me, I call it stunt dog. So come up with these fun command words. And then all week long we practice that. Then the next week, the next guardian takes over and they teach a different trick or command, and then we practice that one all week. By the end, and if each one of you does 4 commands by the end, at the end of 3 months, really by the time spring's around, the dog should have 12 more commands. Studies show when dogs know about 10 or more commands, their confidence level reaches a kind of a tipping point threshold. I forgot to ask how many commands they have, but the more commands we teach them, the better. And it also helps us have a little bit more, they look at us more like an authority figure. Now, I think his growling at him initially was kind of, well, I have possession of this human, who are you to invade? And so we see he's freezing a little bit. So that's a warning. And we don't want to ever communicate or disagree with a growl, because that's a communication. But I can block his visual acuity, and you see then he stopped. So, and recognizing what your dog's warning signs are is really important. It helps us communicate more effectively. But teaching them new tricks and commands, I think, will be very beneficial. It's kind of funny because he's the more subordinate dog, but at times he kind of flips, and that's why people don't realize there's no such thing as an alpha dog. They share leadership. All right, and I'm laughing because they were both pretty not happy when I first got here, and now we're buddies, I guess. But they will still go back to that barking. When they do, when your guest gets up, it's them saying, I didn't give you permission to do these things, because they think they're in charge. The more we enforce these rules, the more they start to see themselves as being in a follower's position, and it's not their job to enforce those rules. Let me see. Out of context, we also use a little classical conditioning to teach them to go to a little area out here away from the door, which is over here. So basically, remember, when you're doing that one, have somebody at the door and have somebody over here with the high-value treats. And I probably do this with one dog at a time. Eventually, you do it with both of them. So you throw the treat onto the dog bed and order a dog bed, go to Groupon and give them, make sure that it's light cream, white, or light gray, and no pattern on it. And try to get it like a sofa cushion with no extra crevices for the treat to fall into. So you throw the treat here, the dog comes over and gets it, and then we lightly knock on the door after the treat goes in the dog's mouth. And we can say the word reservations and practice that separately. Come on, you guys hang out for a little bit longer, buddy, sorry. So to practice that first, set it up when there's nobody at the door, just throw a treat there. When they look it up, say reservation. Remember, always say the word after the treat goes in the mouth. So I do that with maybe 10 treats for each dog once or twice a day. After I say reservation, those run right there. Then we want to use classical conditioning. So we go to the door, and we're going to get a special doorbell. And so when we get the special doorbell ringing, what we do is we throw the treat here, the dog goes over and licks it up, and then we trigger the doorbell. Now the doorbell, if I remember correctly, is kind of a longer chime, so you might want to actually throw a couple of treats, or as soon as the dog starts to move away, throw another treat there. But that's why we practice throwing the treats there first and saying reservation, hang out, buddy. And they get used to going over there. But eventually, when the doorbell rings, they should come over here as opposed to charging the door. Now, let me see, other rules. I think that's it for rules. But look for other ways to delay gratification. We just went through a structured feeding. They'll protest for that for a little bit, but after a while, they'll both wait behind the line. And the great thing about that is then they're doing the work for you. Let me see. We also went over petting with a purpose and passive training. Petting with a purpose is the dog tells you what to do instead of petting them. Like if it jumps up and we pet it, we're saying, I like you petting me. So instead when it jumps up on you, just freeze. And as soon as it gets down, pet it and say down. Or if it just comes over and it's pawing at you, tell it to sit. Or if it jumps up, you could actually tell it to sit too. But only tell it once. If it doesn't sit, then lean back and you're a man of the world. You got other things going on. And then as soon as they sit, if you tell them to sit and they sit, pet them under the chin whenever possible and say the word sit and only the word sit. And try not to say sit. Yes, I know that's appealing. Dogs will respond better to that, but most people don't want to baby talk. So I like to use a conversational tone when I deliver commands. So what we're saying is when you tell the person what to do, nothing happens. But if the person tells you what to do and you do it, you get paid. After a while, the dog will come start sitting in front of you and prepaying for some attention. That's a much more polite interaction. When it does that, make sure you do pet it on its chin and say the word sit. If it's already sitting, ask it to lay down or do something else. I wouldn't recommend shake. If somebody comes to the room and sees that you're petting without a purpose, they say paycheck, you need to immediately stop petting the dog, tell it to sit, hang in there, buddy, and then pet on the chin, then you can tell the person, I actually asked the dog to sit, you missed it, and David said it's okay, and I'm David, and I do say it's okay. Now that's petting with a purpose. Use the word paycheck for that, and after about a month or probably not a couple weeks to a month, they'll get better and better at that, and they'll just start doing it automatically. Now, passive training is something we can use for him. He likes to do this grovel thing where he kind of sits up in a begging position. So every time he does that on his own, pet him and say the word grovel. Every time he grumbles, now the grumble you have to be careful with because a lot of times they're doing it, he's doing it almost as a demand bark. Now remember, when they're barking at you, you can hold a treat in front of them, a high value treat, to redirect them into a sniffing. Wait about 5 seconds of no barking, then tell them to sit. Then you can pet them or give them the treat, but we've redirected them away from the bark into some more desirable behavior. Now, passive training, anything that they do, every time they come to you, pet them and say come. Every time they sit, pet them and say lay down, whatever it is. Feeding them, say lasagna and pizza. But if they do anything that's unusual, they bring you a specific toy. Name each individual toy in your house. That way you say, no, go give me the zebra. No, that's the ball. I want the zebra. Now, all balls can be balls, all bones can be bones, but try to name the specific individual toys specific things and come up with the vocabulary. It just makes it easier. Speaking of passive training, I always teach my dog a command word to drink. Most people don't ever think about that, but every time your dog takes a drink, say water or agua. After a while, you can command your dog if it needs to drink before you're going to get into the car to go for a road trip or whatever it is. I also like to use directional commands. So touch the dog's nose with a treat and throw it outside the boundary. Go to the doorway of the kitchen, throw it into the living room. When the dog runs out and licks it up, say the word media or film for living room. Throw it in the dining room and call it and say diner. What I usually do is I tear a treat in half. I throw it outside of every doorway twice. I throw it out once. The dog goes and licks it up. I say out. Let it come back and I toss a treat. The second one I say out, and then I go to the next doorway. I do it for all the rooms in the house. Then I repeat the process, but this time I throw it into the room and I would say kitchen or a diner or a living room or whatever it is. So that way you create a vocabulary to tell the dog diner, and they run in and go into the living room even though they're in the basement. And so again, the more words that we can create an association with, the easier it is. So every time your dog does those things, that's really a form of passive training. Do that as much as you can. Now, I went through the escalating consequences, disagree with unwanted actions and behaviors. Remember, hiss before they do the wrong thing and only hiss one time per incident. And match the intensity of their energy with your hiss. Number 2, stand up abruptly, turn to face the dog, keep your authority, your belly button pointed at the dog.
until it stands, sits, or lies down. As soon as it does, take 2 steps backwards and only 2 steps backwards. One of the guardians likes to take 3 steps. She'll get better at it. And then as soon as the dog stops moving, take those 2 steps backwards, pause for 1 second, then go back to doing what you're doing. However, if what you were doing is doing what I'm doing now and sitting, when you sit, they will probably challenge you again. So you should expect to have to stand up and readjust it. So don't sit deeply on the couch like I am. Sit on the edge of the couch. And the third consequence is to march deliberately at the dog. Now, the suddenness of your movement towards the dog is the important thing. One of the guardians is moving a little bit kind of soft, and then the guardian was kind of doing a shoving motion when you get to the dog. If you move very suddenly to the dog kind of takes a flinching move back, and that's really what you want to do. It looks a little aggressive, but it's not a non-force, and that's kind of one of the things that dogs do. They feint directions and things like that, and it'll help the dog understand. So march directly towards the dog until the dog, and I guess I forgot to go over this, I'm just realizing this. March directly at the dog, and if the dog backs up a mile, it's still challenging you if it's facing you. March deliberately at the dog until the dog turns sideways or greater away from you. Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. I got you a little in your clavicle, didn't I? And don't pet your dog when you reinforce like I just did. You can let your dog on your hand to your dog if it feels uncomfortable, it's nervous, anxious, fearful, and let it, and then just kind of wait, and then you can pet it. I'm sorry, buddy. But what was I just saying before that?
Redirecting.
Redirecting.
So they turn away or move.
Oh yeah, okay. So when you're the third consequence, march deliberately at the dog and have some steam in your step. The dog needs to think, I'm going to get run over if I don't get out of the way. And as soon as they turn sideways to you, stop. At that point, I go to the second consequence. Nope. Yeah, that was probably me. I activated a little bit of opposition reflex. So we go like this. Yes. There we go. So you're marching deliberately at the dog until it turns sideways. As soon as it turns sideways, you want to get down?
I don't know. He might have to go potty.
It has been the whole session. So when he turns sideways, stop immediately. And then you go to the second consequence. Then you're pivoting till the dog's stationary. Then you take those 2 steps backwards. The only time this doesn't apply is if the dog's already breaking the rule. For example, if the carpet that we're in here, I march the dog, it's not supposed to be on the carpet because somebody's eating, and it turns sideways right away, but it's still on the carpet, I would ignore that and bump into the dog if I need to, and keep on marching till I get to the line. This is how we enforce invisible lounging. Now that I think about this, is probably why it was a little confusing when we were doing the feeding thing. So when you're doing the feeding thing, march deliberately at the dog, and once you get to that line, stop. And so but the suddenness is what's going to sell it. And then the dog's going to try to come over here and step to the side. But it's the point that you would stop enforcing it, and that helps the dog understand this is the boundary. And remember, his job, either one of those jobs, is to push the boundary over and over and over again. They're learning and not being defiant. Trying to see, is it consistent? The consistency of the guardians is the most important thing, and that'll be hard for you guys. So really stay consistent on it. I was just going to say that. Actually, the guardians already beat me to it. Use Post-it notes. Put Post-it notes. Put one at the door. Sit. Put one, over here for reservations and all these different things. So you just get visual reminders of what it is that you're going to do. Now, when you come home, remember, don't pet or engage or even look at the dogs if they're overexcited. We're just going to be nice and relaxed. Now, the video above talks about the kennel. If I forget and I don't have the kennel training video about stepping away, waiting for the dog to lay down, and you forgot that, message me and I'll link it, or I'll send you thank you, buddy, or I'll send you or I'll add it to the write-up. But when you come home, if your dogs are excited, you pet them, you're going to make them more excited. So remember, just ignore them completely. And as soon as they're calm and relaxed, then you reach for them and they start wiggling, pull your arm back and continue doing what you're doing. You're telling the dog through operant conditioning, the only way I'm going to pet you or show interest in you is if you're completely calm. Now, we also went over with the garage door. They hear the garage door and they freak out because, again, people get excited or make a big deal when they come in. So what we want to do is use that garage door, give them a treat, smash the treat. The idea is to let them nibble on the treat in 4 to 5 minutes. So the idea is we let them sniff on we let them start nibbling on the treat. Then I press the remote control of the garage door, and instead of barking and rushing the door, the dog is basically chewing on the treat while it hears the garage door opening and the vibrations. When the treat is about to disappear, stop the garage door. So the only time they hear the garage door going is when there's a treat in the dog's mouth. And after a while, this is counter conditioning. The dog will hear the garage door and think, I'm about to get a treat. And instead of being all excited and running over there, they learn to be calm and balanced. They're coming to you. Beau, do you have anything else you want me to go over? Now, the guardian's asking the dog to sit when it comes in. She's saying sit multiple times. Only say it once. You say it once. If the dog doesn't do it, then close the door.
And the dog doesn't get, you have to wait 1 minute before you do it again. We try to say it over and over again because we're trying to be considerate, but we're really not. We're really confusing the dog. Now, when we do have guests come over, make sure we exercise them before we have guests come over. And if the dog won't stop barking, remember, you can use the treat to redirect their scent, but wait for 5 seconds, then give them something else to do. Now, when your guests are going to get up, at least in the short term, ask the guest, and you might even give the guest some treats. The guest, if I'm going to get up, if the dog's here and I throw a treat on the ground and then I stand up, I preceded my movement with a positive reinforcer. The dog runs over and gets the treat and he looks at me, all right, now what are you going to do? Throw another treat and take a step. And then sometimes I will throw a treat back at the dog, or I'll drop a treat for each step. So after a while, the dog's like, you know, I used to bark at people and nip at them when they walked away from me, but now I didn't realize when they walk around, they're actually just treat delivery people. So I'm just going to walk around and behind them and gobble up all these treats. One other thing you could do is teach the dog to catch. I think he caught one. I don't know if he knows how to catch or he's just coincidental, but that's a nice game for them to do with. If you have somebody comes over and they don't get along with them, tell them to sit. Make sure the guest is always having to do something first. And sitting is a more subordinate position. If they won't sit, it's not that unusual, but then they don't get a treat. I'm not going to beg you. I have a treat here for a sit. If not, then you don't want to get paid. That's okay. But eventually, if you get the dog to sit and the guest can throw treats and play catch with the dog, that's a wonderful way to have a nice positive interaction. The dog can be far enough away where it feels comfortable. Ironically, I learned how to teach a dog to catch with a friend of the person who is filming this video right now. His dog didn't know how to do it. It hit the nose and fall on the ground. So what I would do is I'd have somebody sitting next to it. So we throw the treat. When you throw it, don't go 1, 2, and then the dog starts looking and it hits their nose. Just throw it on the first one. Make sure it's such a good throw that all the dog has to do is open its mouth and it goes in the mouth. If it goes in the mouth, say the word catch or something like that. If it doesn't, if it goes here, pick it up and give it back to the person. The only way the dog gets it is by snatching it out of the air. You create that motivation. All right, anything else? Anything I want to go over that you forgot? I forgot? Well, this is Beau, this is Gus, that's Beau, and this is their roadmap to success. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.